The desert wind dragged dust across the horizon, swallowing sound, bending the sage, and gnawing at the silence that clung to the McAllister ranch. The late afternoon sun was slipping low, painting everything in deep copper and fading gold. Luke McAllister rode slow along the fence line, reins loose, his horse moving steady beneath him. It was a routine patrol, same as every evening since he buried his wife 7 years ago. He didn't talk much anymore. Not to the ranch hands that passed through, not to the neighbors who stopped by to check on him. But the land, the horses, and the lonely wind, they knew his silence. They'd grown used to it. He'd just reached the western pasture when he saw movement through the haze. At first he figured it was a wounded coyote. It crawled along the ridge awkwardly, clutching its middle. Then it stood, staggering on 2 legs. A person. Luke narrowed his eyes, his hand instinctively going to the rifle holstered beside his saddle. Folks didn't wander this far from the main trail unless they were running from something, or toward something worse. The figure stumbled again, and this time the light caught her. A girl, barefoot. Her dress was torn at the sleeves and hem and streaked with dirt and what looked like dried blood. Her hair was matted, tangled, and glinted with chestnut strands beneath the dust. For a second, Luke's breath caught. She couldn't have been older than 20. He nudged the horse forward and called out, "Hey!" The sound of his voice startled her. She turned, wide-eyed, clutching a small leather satchel to her chest. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then she crumpled, her knees buckling into the sand. Luke kicked his boot from the stirrup and jumped down, rifle in hand. He approached slow, each footstep sinking softly into the dust. "Don't move," he warned. Not out of cruelty, but instinct. He'd seen men feign weakness before, only to pull a knife when you got close enough. The girl froze, chest heaving. Her breath came out ragged, each inhale wheezing through cracked lips. "Please," she whispered, voice thin as the desert wind. I'm not armed." Luke squinted at her, lowering his rifle an inch. "Who are you? What are you doing out here?" Her eyes lifted to meet his. Green. Bright green, so alive against the grime on her face that for a moment, Luke felt his pulse skip. I don't know where else to go," she said, voice trembling. "They were chasing me. Men said I stole—" Her words dissolved into coughing. Luke hesitated. There wasn't a settlement for 20 miles. Whoever she wasn't lying about being lost. He stepped closer, just enough to catch the faint smell of smoke and blood on her. The satchel she clutched slipped from her hands and spilled open, a few crumpled papers. A broken photograph and a small locket fell into the dirt. He crouched, ready to pick them up when she suddenly looked at him, really looked. Something flickered across her expression. Recognition. "Please," she whispered. "Don't shoot." "I'm sorry, Luke." His body went cold. He hadn't told her his name. He straightened slowly. "What did you just call me?" Her voice cracked as she spoke again, barely audible. "Luke, you promised. You said no matter how bad it got, you'd wait for me under the cottonwoods." The world tilted. Luke's fingers loosened around the rifle until it slipped from his grip, hitting the dirt with a dull thud. That sentence, those exact words, had been the last thing his wife, Clara, ever said before she died. The fever had taken her fast and cruel, and he'd buried her under the cottonwoods by the river himself. Nobody else had been there. Nobody could have known. His mouth went dry. "What did you say?" Her eyes filled with tears. "You promised me," she whispered. "You'd wait." Luke stumbled a step backward, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice sharp. The girl blinked, confusion and sorrow swimming together in her gaze. "I told you," she murmured. "It's me, Luke. It's Clara." The name hit him like a blow. For a moment, the air seemed to vanish from his lungs. He looked at her again, really looked. The same color eyes, the same curve to her jaw, the same small scar near her temple where Clara had fallen off a horse when she was 19. His chest tightened. "No," he breathed, shaking his head. "You can't be." "I remember you," she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "You used to hum when you worked on the fence line. I used to watch you from the porch." His throat constricted. Every part of him screamed to turn and walk away, but he couldn't. He knelt beside her, the smell of rain and sand thick between them. "You listen to me," he said, voice low and rough. "My wife, Clara, died 7 years ago. You're not her." She stared at him for a long moment, trembling. Then her fingers lifted weakly, brushing against the small silver locket lying in the dirt. She pushed it toward him. "Then explain this," she whispered. He picked it up, hesitating. The clasp was broken, the hinge rusted from age. He flipped it open and felt his entire body go still. Inside was a faded photograph, his wedding day. Him and Clara, standing by the barn, both younger, laughing. He'd lost that locket years ago when her coffin was lowered into the ground. He'd thought it buried with her. His breath came shallow. "Where did you get this?" The girl blinked slowly, her voice soft as dust. "You gave it to me." For a moment, Luke couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The desert was dead silent except for the faint rattle of wind through the dry grass. He stared at her face, torn between terror and something that felt like memory. A sudden crack echoed across the ridge. A rock shifting, maybe a coyote, but it snapped him out of the trance. He grabbed the rifle and turned, scanning the hills. Nothing. Just shadows stretching long in the dying light. When he looked back, the girl had collapsed again, her body limp, eyes closed. Luke caught her before she hit the ground, her weight feather-light in his arms. He could feel her pulse, weak but steady, against his wrist. He lifted her carefully, cradling her against his chest. The storm clouds were building in the east, heavy, dark, and full of thunder. He knew he couldn't leave her there. Whatever truth or madness she carried, she needed help. As he laid her across the horse and mounted up behind her, the locket slipped from his pocket, catching the light one last time before swinging gently against her hand. The storm had rolled in deep through the night, pounding against the roof like 1,000 fists. By dawn, the sky was bruised purple and the air smelled of wet dust and cedar smoke. Luke McAllister hadn't slept. He'd sat in that same wooden chair beside the cot, boots still on, his rifle resting across his knees. The girl hadn't stirred much, just the faint twitch of her fingers now and then, as though chasing something in a dream. When the first slice of pale morning crept through the shutters, Luke finally stood. His back cracked from stiffness. The fire in the hearth had burned low, the last embers glowing faintly beneath a bed of ash. He added another log, the sound of popping resin loud in the silence. Then he turned toward her. She was awake. Her green eyes were open, clearer now in the weak light. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of the rain's tail end whispered against the roof, soft and slow. Her gaze moved across the room, studying the old furniture, the gun rack, the faded photographs on the mantel. It was as if she knew every inch of the place already. "Where am I?" she finally asked, her voice hoarse but steadier than the night before. "My ranch," Luke said. 20 miles west of Clearwater Ridge." Her brow furrowed. "Clearwater," she repeated as if tasting the word. Then she looked at him. "You shouldn't have brought me here." Luke frowned. "You were half dead out there. I wasn't about to leave you for the coyotes." "You don't understand." She pushed herself up slightly on her elbows, grimacing in pain. "They'll come looking for me. And when they do, they'll come for you too." Luke crossed his arms. "Who's they?" She hesitated. "Men," she said finally. "Riders. From the east. They wanted something I took." He studied her face, the tremor in her hands, the fear behind her eyes. "That's so? And what did you take that's worth killing over?" The girl glanced toward the satchel lying on the floor beside the cot. Luke followed her gaze. Slowly he knelt and opened it. Inside were a few more crumpled pages and a small leather-bound journal, its cover marked with a symbol he didn't recognize. 2 interlocking circles burned into the hide. He flipped it open. The first few pages were written in a hurried, looping script. Names, places, coordinates. "What is this?" he asked. She swallowed hard. "Proof," she said softly, "of what they did to me, to others." Luke stared at her for a long moment, then shut the book and set it aside. He didn't know what she meant, but he'd seen enough evil in his life to recognize fear when it spoke. Still, one question clawed at his mind stronger than all the others. "How do you know my name?" he asked quietly. Her eyes flickered. "I told you last night, yet the